Bruins have put onto the ice and as a part of this celebration. And Beersy, I think it was very clear and very apparent from the moment that the Bruins started this Centennial season that they went all out in the planning.
Yeah, Judd, we've had a lot of people on to interview. I've talked to a lot of people. I mean, it was an era night that I was involved in as well. But it just when we had some of the '70s guys in, and they talked about it and just how excited they were to be involved in this thing because they felt everything was done just right. And I know that there was so much preparation involved in this. There were so many people that were involved in getting, logistically, right? Just getting everybody into town, getting their wives into town, getting their families in, whether it was flights, hotels, whether they're coming from Europe, wherever they're coming from, and to make sure that they're all taken care of for the weekend that they were in town. Everybody that we've talked to, top to bottom, it's been first class. It's been A1, and everybody's had nothing but good things to say about it. And I give the Bruins a ton of credit for all that.
So along the way, we're going to hear from the president of the Bruins and Hall of Famer Cam Neely, and the team's all-time leader in games played and points. That's Hall of Famer Ray Bourque. Later on, if we have a little bit of time, we're going to touch a little bit on the Bruins' regular season and the upcoming Stanley Cup playoffs. So the Bruins, the way that they broke the Centennial down, Beersy, I thought was great. They had 5 different era nights. It began with the Bruins paying respect to those legendary names: Shore, Clapper, Hitchman, Brimsick, guys that won the Cup in 29, 39, and 41.
Yeah, and then you think about that. And then just at the tail end of that, right, that World War II starts, and guys that had played for the team at that point in time, and the Kraut line, and they're being carried off the ice by the Montreal Canadian players.
That's
right?
Unbelievable.
It is, right. And we can't put ourselves back in that time, but to win cups, to be involved in that, and then and the way that the organization kind of evolved from there and then continued on, and then it went through a little bit of a dip, through what, 60s, 50s, 60s, and all of a sudden Bob Orr comes and things change a little bit for them. There's just, when you really look back and study the history of it, it's amazing. I enjoy doing that. We've been part of it for so many years, for a handful of years here in the big scheme of things, but when you really go back and examine the whole history of it, it's amazing, and it's a lot of fun to look at. You see all the names. It's hard to put faces to names, obviously, but I got a chance to meet a lot of those guys from the 30s and the 40s who were still around when I came to the Bruins and was part of the Bruins, and as a player, and then even after I retired as an alum.
The Bruins and hockey here went to another level, however, for the next era. So 29 years after winning the Cup in 1941, you start the big bad Bruins era. A guy like Eddie Westfall joined us during the season.
We were a happy-go-lucky group with the swashbuckling kind of team, but we relied on each other, and it worked. I'll never forget, we were sitting in a establishment in Chicago a little more than halfway through the 1972 year, and we all decided amongst each other, like a bunch of college kids, we started a rah-rah thing, and we all remembered what it was like to win the Cup. And so we said, okay, how bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? Yeah. So everybody was answering to the call. I said, well, if you want it bad enough, then let's go win it. And everybody bought in.
So we can talk a little bit more about that. It wasn't just that they won, it was how they won and the type of characters they had. Then it was Don Cherry's Lunch Pail AC group. They were up next, and when that group was honored on the ice, a bunch of them actually came through the penalty box, including Mike Milbury.
My first coach was Don Cherry, and he made it a simple game. My breakout play was up the wall and off the glass, and get it to the wingers who would beat up on opposing defensemen, and when they got to the red line, they dump it in, and they forecheck the hell out of the other team's defense and cycle down low until we got a shot. It was, he was the only guy behind the bench. And today you see 3, 4, 5 guys behind the bench, but Don did it all, and he made it. He held us accountable. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Every game was important, and every game was a game that you had to show up physically. That he wouldn't deny anybody the accountability factor. So it was a simple, straightforward game, and I think it appealed to people around here.
A local guy like Milbury said sitting next to some of those players was like sitting next to gods. Your era nights against the Montreal Canadiens, new blood, new beginnings, that was electric, and the Bruins capped it with a return of a champion from 2001 to the present. That started the 2011 Cup team, and it was tremendous seeing that group back together, including Timmy Thomas.
I did love my burgers. I was, one of my nicknames was Cheeseburger. That day before a game, I would have a cheeseburger, and if I won, I obviously continue it. And I was eating, unfortunately, this is the truth, I was eating Burger King a lot back then. Not the best food for you nowadays. I think the beef was a little bit healthier back then. But now I just eat, good burgers.
But it was such a deep pool and such a deep reservoir of so many great players, so many great stories we had a chance to visit with just in the booth. It was unbelievable. Up next, we're going to hear from the president of the team and Hall of Famer Cam Neely. This is the Bruins at 100, presented by Granite City Electric Supply on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
A century of Boston.
Now it's back, left point, Roberts, Shaw, shot.
Scores! Neely cut the front, and Neely gets number 50 as the Bruins lead 6-3.
Welcome back to the Bruins at 100, presented by Granite City Electric Supply. We're glad to be joined by the president of the Boston Bruins and the Hall of Famer Cam Neely. Cam, thank you for jumping on. Let's start here. What's the undertaking of the Centennial been like organization-wide?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Judd and Bob. We put a committee together, an internal committee together quite some time ago, probably 18 months or so ago, maybe a little longer now. As we were approaching 100, we're the first American team to hit 100, so we wanted to make sure we were doing everything right, or as right as we could get it. So then there was some, we had the initial group, and then they would, cut out smaller groups and talk about certain nights, the Era Nights or the Centennial Gala, those types of things. But I got to give our associates a ton of credit, because it certainly was a huge undertaking, and I thought everything so far has come off really well.
Cam, the guys that we've talked to throughout these Era Nights, I mean, where did you get the idea for the Era Nights? Because I don't know if other teams have done that. I haven't heard of other teams doing that. And the players that have come in that we've talked to have all been, I mean, they just said how great it's been to be back and to be seeing everybody again, guys that you haven't seen in so many years, and that the Bruins really pulled it off and did a really good job with it.
Yeah, the comments that we've received from the alumni has been really, really good. They're excited to get back into Boston. They're excited to see their teammates. Some of them they hadn't seen in decades. I think just the group itself. I don't know if it was Andrea Mazzarelli that came up with the specific idea, but I think just the fact that what the organization has done over 100 years and the teams that they've played and some of the great moments that the organization has had. It kind of set itself up to have these Era Nights where, you're playing some other original six teams, that some of these great moments, like, take example, the Ranger Era Night, with Milbury walking out with a shoe. And we all know what happened in Madison Square Garden back then. But it's just stuff like that I think, fans can really relate to, especially depending on what era, the older fans certainly could relate to something like that.
But Cam, as a guy who played for the team and now runs the team, did this year's celebration give you a different or a new appreciation of the heritage and the history of the team?
Well, it certainly did. When you go through what the organization has done, the team has done for 100 years, you don't remember it all, of course, and then. Some of it you weren't born for or witnessed live. It certainly does give you an appreciation for all the great players that have come through here, what the organization has meant to the city and the region of New England, and how it's really it's become such a, we call it the hub of hockey for a reason, but it's really been special to have a look back like we've had this year.
Cam, for you, first of all, I looked up Hockey DB just to make sure I had my facts straight. It got you listed at 6'1", 185. I mean, I played with you 2 years after you were in the Bruins organization. I didn't remember you being 6'1", 185.
No, I broke in at 185 with Vancouver at 18. So, I'm a long way from 185.
Well, we both are, right? So.
Yeah. But my years in Boston, I probably played at 220.
Yeah, I could see that. Look, you get traded to the Bruins. Take me through the trade and just how that felt coming from Vancouver, a place where you grew up. You're playing with the Canucks for a couple of years, 3 years, and all of a sudden you become a Boston Bruin. What it meant to you, how things evolved into just how you became a fabric here in the community.
Well, yeah, it was, obviously pre-cell phones. It was actually my birthday, and I was at the gym working out with some buddies in early June. And apparently a deal was struck between the Bruins and the Canucks, but they couldn't track me down. My sister knew I was working out, so they called the house, and she ended up calling the health club that I was at and basically told me, hey, listen, Cam, you got to call the GM. You've been traded. He needs to get a hold of you. So my sister was the one that told me I was traded. So, yeah, it was shocking. It really was. I mean, obviously, I being from Maple Ridge, which is at the time probably 40 minutes outside of Vancouver. It was kind of a dream come true to play for your hometown team. And my last year was probably, my third year in Vancouver, wasn't really going as I certainly would have hoped. I think I played more in my first year than I did my third year. Just, wasn't, at one point, I think I centered the fourth line. So I kind of was like, oh boy, I'm getting traded from Vancouver where I'm having trouble playing to a team that's at the time was much better. I go, how is this going to work for me? How am I going to, get my career back on track? But fortunately, when I got to Boston, they put me with good players, I guess, to see if I could play with them. And fortunately, it all worked out. And, I think the size of the building, the ice surface, kind of suited my game a little bit better than most.
When for you, Cam, though, when did you realize, okay, I'm more than maybe what they had me pegged as, if that makes any sense. I mean, 88, you guys beat. That was before I got there. 88, you guys beat the Canadians, and that was a huge deal in the playoffs.
Right.
It was the first time in a long time. But for you personally, when did you realize, look, I can score in this league. I can be that power forward and make such an impact or a different impact.
I honestly felt that even in Vancouver, I could be that player. I just wasn't. I was behind Tony Tanti and Stan Smeal. Tony was a 40-goal scorer. Stan, captain of the team. They just went to the finals the year before I got there. So I wasn't really getting any power play minutes or minutes like the top six forward would get. But I thought, and I think I played 56 games that year and had 16 goals. So I felt I could score in the league. I just got, stuck behind a couple guys. And I understood that. But when I first got to Boston and I started scoring on a regular basis, that's when I felt like, okay, I can become this, this player that's going to get, whether it was 30 or 40 goals in the league. I mean, my first year in Boston, I think I had 36. So I felt like, okay, I've kind of started to arrive and become the player that I thought I could be.
So, Cam, when you did get here at age 21 in 1986, there were some older guys who were on the team that spanned a different era, guys like Rick Middleton, Mike Milbury, your head coach, Terry O'Reilly. When and how did you get a sense of the culture and the history and how unique it was here?
Well, it was really early on, to be honest with you, Judd. I mean, it was remarkably different than what I experienced in Vancouver in a sense where, there was pride in putting that jersey on, and you could tell from the older guys that it meant a great deal to them to make sure the younger players really understood what it meant to wear that jersey. And then also you look at the players when I first got there, like, your better players were the hardest working guys in practice. And, that makes you sit up and take notice. You're like, okay, these guys aren't screwing around. They're in this to win this. And, it just rubbed off on me.
Cam, take me back to the old Boston Garden, fond memories, obviously, just what it was like to play in that building and in that atmosphere. Well,
let me tell you something. It was much better as a home as the home team as it was the visiting team. I can tell you that. Just amazing, like the balcony was right on top of you. I mean, it just felt like the fans were right next to you. It was such a fun environment to play in, especially as I mentioned, from a home team's perspective. I'll never forget. I went to a Detroit Pistons Celtics playoff game. I think it was a game 7, maybe at the Garden, and I'm up in one of the older suites with some friends of mine, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe how loud it is in here. And they looked at me and said, Cam, this doesn't compare to the Bruins game. So, I just got a little different perspective because I didn't really go to many other games outside of playing in the Garden. So when you're on the ice, it's a little different than when you're up high and really understand how energetic that building was. And even today we still have a great atmosphere in our building.
Cam, before we sneak in a question about the regular season and maybe the playoffs here for the Bruins, I want you to go back to this year. How much did you enjoy reliving the era night that the Bruins had, breaking the hex against the Canadiens?
Well, it was just great to see those teammates that, some of them aren't living here anymore, and, some we run into more often than not. But to really, hear stories of things you forgot that other guys maybe remember, whether they're embellished or not, probably probably a little bit, but it was just great to break bread with these guys and laugh and have some fond memories of a great experience that we all had together.
So, Cam, before we let you go, just maybe a couple of comments on this year's team, where this team is at right now. I think a lot of people, I will count myself among them, surprised at how many points they've had and really impressed with what they've done this season. But where do you see them, and where do you see this team heading into the playoffs?
Well, I like the way we've been playing lately. We had a tough stretch there where we weren't checking very well. We weren't playing, Bruins type hockey. We got away from it a little bit. Probably playing a lot looser than we'd like, and guys have reined it back in. One thing that I'm proud of is that they weren't looking at what happened the year before and the off season that we lost a bunch of players. They were saying, okay, we're still a good team. We're going to prove to ourselves. And they've done that. They really have. I give the guys credit. Guys are having years that people didn't expect. The team's having a year that most didn't expect. But the competitiveness of this group is something. And everybody wants to do well. It's easy to say, oh yeah, I want to play well, I want to do well, but you see practices when you watch our team practice, and led by Brad. This guy competes on every puck and every drill, and it's hard not to be infectious if you see that from your captain.
Cam, last thing, and we really appreciate you being so generous with your time, because and we've talked about some of these guys. There have been so many legendary players that have come through the doors and onto the ice for the Boston Bruins here over the last 100 years. Zdeno Chara, Patrice Bergeron, they just retired. When it comes to the process for retiring numbers, how do the Bruins go through it?
Well, I've done two, Nifty and oh my God, sorry.
Willie O'Ree went up also.
Yeah, Willie, thank you, Willie. Nifty and Willie, my apologies. Ownership about and said, listen, I think on it. I know, for a 100-year-old team, there wasn't a lot of numbers retired, and for a reason. I think it's something extremely special to have your number retired by an organization, and talking to Harry a little bit about what his thought process was. For me, it's about who you are as a player, and also who you are in the community, and do you represent the organization the way we'd like the organization to be represented. But obviously, first and foremost, it's what contributions did you have on the ices, and then you look at what they do off the ice.
Cam, thanks for jumping on. We really appreciate it. Enjoy the Centennial. The organization has done a spectacular job.
And I appreciate that, Judd. I really do. I think you're right. We should be all very proud of how this Centennial season's gone on so far, and we still got plenty of hockey left.
Sounds good. Thanks for jumping on, Cam.
Thanks, Cam. Appreciate it.
All right, you guys take care.
That's the president of the Boston Bruins and Hall of Famer Cam Neely. Again, this is the Bruins at 100, presented by Granite City Electric Supply, 98.5 The Sports Hub. Joe Murray has your Sports Hub headlines.
Rebound to Kim Johnson. Stolen by Hines, left wing corner. In the slot to Bourque, wheeling for a backhander. And a score by Bourque. There it is. The 1,500th point by Raymond Bourque. So move over, Wayne Gretzky. Step aside, Gordie Howe. Leave a space, Mark Messier. Shift back, Marcel Dion. Open the door, Phil Esposito. Roll out the red carpet, Steve Yzerman. Raise a toast, Ron Francis. And tip your cap, Paul Coffey, because Ray Bourque has joined you in that elusive 1,500-point club.
Great Bob Newmeyer with that call there.
Love it. We are honored to be joined by a legendary Bruin. 21 years, the all-time leader in games played, assists, points, a 5-time Norris Trophy. Things that you had talked about were some of the legendary players that were on the team when you came in 1979. What did you learn about being a Bruin, and what was it all about?
Well, it was about having each other's back and showing up and being ready to work, and it was an amazing feeling coming in as an 18-year-old and just being around those guys. Jerry Cheevers, Jean Rattel were both 40 years old. Terry Riley, Brad Park that took me under his wing, and Wayne Cashman that was our captain, Don Marcotte, Gary Doak, Rick Smith. You probably had maybe 4 or 5 guys that had won the cup in '72, and knowing about the Bruins and growing up in Montreal and the big rivalry that they've had, over so many years. And being on the other side of it as a young kid, cheering for the other side, and then now being part of knowing what it was as a Bruin, and coming right after that really tough loss that they had in the semifinals in the 7th game when they were up 3-1, too many men on the ice, and how bitter and how devastating a loss that was for them, and it was. It was an amazing feeling, and just trying to be part of something that, that for me anyways, and every Bruins player or Bruins fan was trying to, how can we find a way to beat Montreal in the playoffs? And that took a little while before that happened, but I felt it like in training camp because they were so bitter about that loss. And trying to be, a part of changing things in that way. But just the culture, and the expectations, and being a Bruin, what it meant to be a Bruin, and how you had to show up and be ready to work and give it all you had every day. So it's something that I learned pretty quick and pretty young, and something that everybody just tries to pass on, and to this day that's something very special that the Bruins have. When you talk about culture, we had it for so long, and then it was lost for a little bit, and then it's been here now. It's been back for Shara, Bergeron, Marchand now, and it got lost for a little bit, but they regained that, and it's going strong. And every team in the NHL tries to have what the Bruins have in terms of culture and expectations, and regardless of, it's like last year they had the most talented team and an amazing season, all that stuff. This year, coming into this year, nobody expected them to be where they are right now, and that has to do with culture and expectations, and the guys just showing up and doing what they need to do, and the expectations of being a Bruin.
Ray, for you personally, you're part of a couple of the era nights. You try to stay in touch with players throughout the years, but it's impossible to do, right? But you probably saw a lot of guys and people that you haven't seen in a long time. Just what did being a part of some of those era nights mean to you, and seeing some of the people?
It was very special. They did an amazing job. I was part of 3 of them, and then another night I was there because I had to be there for Rapid 7, It was the night that they were celebrating the 2011 Stanley Cup team, and I got to see, like Byron Defoe, Kyle McLaren, guys that I hadn't seen in the three previous things that I was part of. But Keith Crowder, roommates with him for 5 years. And not seeing him in a while. Lendy Moog, not seeing him in a while. And so many guys that, you haven't seen maybe in 10, 15 years. And it's just amazing. And the Wise, back in the day, we had amazing chemistry as a team. And those years in, 87, maybe the early 90s. But the girls had way more fun than we did. The Wise, and it was just fun to kind of get together with the guys, the wives, and all that stuff, and you find yourself right back to where you were back in the day, and those are special times, and it all comes back to you, and it's special feelings that we shared together. Going to 2 Stanley Cup finals, and those years we're getting to the semis or finals, and we had amazing runs, and the Wives were a big part of that. And, the Wives Carnival and everything that they were doing. And just being part of that and find yourself back in that little feeling again has been amazing. And so all those 3 nights, and then, the fourth night that I found myself, around Kyle McLaren, I was, a rookie back in the day that I got a great story about that. We had back then it was no initiations, but it was a team meal that the rookies would be paying for. And I was sitting at a table with Adam Oates, Cam, and Don Sweeney, and a lobster tail came out in my shoe that I had put right over my head on a little shelf, and everybody gets shoe checked, but then I had beautiful tassels, a brand new shoe, and my lobster tail comes out, all that stuff, and then Adam Holtz tells me that I'm on it. He tells me it's Kyle McLaren. I get his nice leather jacket slice. Now his jacket becomes a vest. Then it wasn't Kyle McLaren. It was Adam Oates. So it was like all these things are just crazy times that we spent together, and we had so many good laughs together. So see all those guys, and like John Wensink at some point, and Phyllis Vazilo the first night, and Cheesy, and all those guys all came back. So I played in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000. So I touched so many decades that I got to play with so many amazing people, and just to get back with them and to experience, to have fun with them again, and just the long tradition of the Bruins, and they did an amazing job what they did this year with the Centennial, and credit to the Bruins, and it's just been a lot of fun to be part of.
Ray, when you talk about the tradition of the Bruins, the franchise has been known for a lineage of great defensemen going all the way back to the team's inception. We're talking names like Hitchman, Clapper, Shore, and then Orr, Park, yourself. But when you got here in 1979, whether it was some of those names or other guys, what sort of influence did they have on you as a blue liner?
Well, I grew up in Montreal watching the Big Three, and that was Robinson, Savard, and LaPointe. And I was just a huge fan. I used to go to parades, and and they were winning all the time at that point in time. And I obviously knew of Bobby Orr and Brad Park, and so I kind of looked up at the Big Three in Montreal. But once I got to Boston, Brad Park was amazing with me. Brad would come out early with me, stay late with me, and just do some crazy stuff. And just finding lanes to get the puck to the net. He would bring out, back then we had benches, and they were just partitions kind of thing, like maybe 8 foot long or whatever. And he'd lay them down, he'd stand them up, and he'd move them around, and he had me kind of get the puck in a certain position, move around, and just kind of like if a player was coming out to me, and so many different things like that. And if you know Brad Park, he could corner you and talk to you about hockey for hours. And I was back then I was a sponge, and I really looked up to Brad, and he really worked with me, and he was an amazing influence on me getting started in the right track. So even in Vegas, he brought me to the craps tables, and I didn't have no clue what was they doing. We were at Caesars, and he knew this guy working the tables, and his name was Frenchy. He was a French guy, and I ended up walking out of there with maybe $1,000, never knowing how to play craps. So on and off the ice, he was a big help.
Well, Raymond, I remember you taking us, just the defensemen. We were in L.A. for an extra day, and we all went to Vegas for the day because we had an extra day off. I remember you dragging us all up there. Didn't know what I was doing either.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, your tenure in Boston as a player, your biggest accomplishment, what you're most proud of, not maybe as an individual or as a team while you were as a Bruin?
That's a really tough one. I'm just so proud of, those years where we got to two finals, 87, that run we had 87 to the early 90s, and getting to two finals. And for me, when we beat Montreal in 87, I'd go back to Montreal every summer, and I'd have to hear about, losing to them or what happened and all that crap. And finally, 87, 88, we get to the finals and we beat Montreal in 5 games, and, we win Game 5 in Montreal, and it was like, oh my God, it was the best summer I've ever had. But that group of guys, I came in and it was like, we had Cash and Cheesy and just the turnover that happened during that time where it became our team, and 86, 87 kind of thing. And then we kind of took off and had a really nice run, and we're really close pretty much every year at that point in time. That was amazing. It was the chemistry that we had, and that was a very special time, and probably my fondest memories of our team, or my teammates, and it was our group. It was our group, and it was special. We all kind of came in together. We kind of some new guys and all that stuff, but the core was all drafted kind of like in the early '80s. To the mid '80s at the latest, and it really became our team and our guys, and we had a nice little run there. So, it's all team stuff that you kind of remember. Getting to those two finals finally, like, my first year I come in and we finished first overall, and then we lose to the Islanders. The Islanders go on to win 4 straight cups, and then it was. Then it was Edmonton's run, and it's so I just wish we could have cashed in on one of those 2 cup finals, but just getting there and doing it as a club and a team, really, it's really hard to win. It's really, really, really hard to win. So, but that's pretty much my fondest memories. Individually, there's obviously there's plenty, but that doesn't really that's for me.
Ray, last thing before we spring in, we really appreciate you jumping on. You played 214 playoff games. That's the 12th most in National Hockey League history. Any advice that you'd give to this current group as they get set for the best time of the year on the hockey calendar?
It's. I think their leadership and their coaching and management and all that stuff. I mean, they just just be ready. I mean, just be ready to elevate. You got to elevate. I always said, you go through training camp and then you get to the first game of the season. Now you're playing for real. And it gets to another level. And then, playoffs come around and now it gets to total, every game is played, and you see it. The guys are ready. They're ready to play, and the intensity, every single play matters. There's so much more physical. The intensity, the pace picks up. It's hard to believe that the pace could pick up when you watch an NHL regular season game, but it really does. And it's what happens is the pace elevates, but it's you'll see the same pace in the course of the season at times, but when you watch a playoff game, it's elevated for a longer period of time, and you got to be ready for that. And if you're not, you'll be shocked, and it'll be tough. But the Bruins have been, they've been in the playoffs. They've done so much. Obviously last year they were built to win, and it didn't happen. This year, people might be writing them off, but it might be a totally different story. So they've had an amazing season. Any major advice? It's just be ready to elevate, and it's the best time of the year. So you want to be that guy that's able to elevate and make a difference, and experience what comes with it, with success. I mean, the toughest, a lot of times that first round's the toughest one to win, and then you find yourself getting to the semis or finals, and there's no better feeling than just winning a series. But it's so hard. It is so hard, and you got to be ready for it. So, any major advice? No, I don't. It's just you got to experience it. You got to be ready for it, and you got to have fun with it. And but what I would say is, after a win, you are sky high. And after a loss, you think it's the end of the world. And it's just trying to stay level. It's just trying to stay even keel. I mean, and it is so hard to do with the ups and downs of the playoffs. And that's one advice I would say. When thinking about it, is just stay, hey, guys, it's only a win. We've only got 2, or we only got 3, and we have nothing till we have 4. And don't get too confident, and don't get too down, because things could swing pretty quick one way or the other.
Ray, thanks for jumping on. We really appreciate it. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Bubba.
Pleasure, guys. All right. Hey, aren't you guys in the mornings on weekends?
Once in a while.
It's the eclipse.
Yeah. Hopefully we got a long run of those coming up.
Well, I hope so, because I'll be home soon. So I'm in Florida, and I can't wait to get back and see some playoff games.
Yeah, look forward to seeing you.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
That's Ray Bourque.
All right, guys.
Beersy and I will wrap it up in a moment. This is the Bruins at 100, presented by Granite City Electric Supply on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
It's Bruins at 100, reflecting on 100 years of Boston Bruins hockey with Judd Sirott and Bob Beers, presented by Granite City Electric on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
Sick of being upsold at gyms?
For just $300 more, you'll reach Sweat Platinum.
a step, left circle, shoots, he scores! Jesper Boquist cranked it in off the near post, an overtime game winner, and they're going to take a 5-point lead in the Atlantic Division with 4 games left. We welcome you back to the Bruins at 100, and it's certainly been a pleasure for Beersy and I to talk about everything we've seen this season and reminisce about the Centennial season here for the Boston Bruins. And we should probably touch, before we get out of here, on what we're seeing this year in the Centennial season from the team on the ice. And Beersy, this is a group, and both Cam Neely, Ray Bourque, they've talked about it. The Bruins have done it this year and won games with a different group that's had to win a different way. And they're vying for the best record in the Eastern Conference. We're coming down the last handful of games.
Yeah, it's John, I don't know where it's going to go. I've been really impressed, especially the way they played recently. And there's been different times this season where they played well. There's been different times where they've had some issues and they've had to clean them up. And there's always something that they have to clean up. And but they're confident in the way that they're playing right now. And look, you take away David Pastrnak, who's had just a fantastic season. What he's done this year with kind of the changing of the guard in the middle has really been remarkable. I mean, he's had a fantastic year. Is it better than last? He had 60 goals last year, but you know, you had a. I don't want to disrespect anybody this year, but you had a better supporting cast. You really did. You know, you had more depth, I think, last year. But you've had guys that have bought in this year and are playing some really good hockey right now. Like you said, we don't know where this thing ends up, but you can't help but be impressed if you look at the body of work, the amount of points they have. People were writing them off, saying they'd be a bubble team, playoff, that type of thing. And they've proven people wrong this season. So, yeah, I get it. Naysayers are going to say, all right, what are you going to do in the postseason? You know, because of last year, and fair enough. They deserve that, right? So, but they got an opportunity here. You know, this show was about the 100 years, the Centennial. It's been a fantastic look back on the history of the Bruins, where they've come from, what they've become, and now, you know, this team is writing their own chapter, and we'll see how things go here in another week and a half or so, and who they're going to play. We don't know that yet. That's all up in the air. But I do think it's about team. You know, we can talk about Pastrnak and the year he's had, but it is about team. You've had guys that have had career highs in certain areas, whether it's goals, whether it's points, and have played a big impact on what this team has done up until this point. And you know, now we get excited about what's coming up around the corner here.
And Beersy and I will be with you tomorrow night. It's the Bruins against the Carolina Hurricanes. Duncan pregame at 6:30, and the puck drop at 7 o'clock. We want to say thanks to the president of the Bruins, Cam Neely. Thanks to Hall of Famer Ray Bourque for jumping on the show. Thanks to our executive producer, Jeremy Connolly, for all of his work putting this on tonight. This has been the Bruins at 100, presented by Granite City Electric Supply on 98.5thesportshub.com. Joe Murray is coming.